Sanders, because I don't see our district directory yet. Then Daniel Sanders, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarinka. What's a virtual shake hands look like? Well, I'm the program quality director, and I am responsible in District 71 for education and training. And it has been my privilege to link up with Danny Banks, who I'll introduce shortly. Danny is a professional educator, now retired from teaching in secondary schools. And as far as I remember, he taught in the humanities, and I'm going to take a pot shot that it might be history rather than geography this time. I'm sure you'll put me right. And one of Danny's flagship projects as training chair this year has been the establishment of a trainers bureau, and behind that an academy to support new trainers, area directors who want to become better at trainers through the Speaker to Trainer program. So he can introduce that a little bit more. My aspirations for tonight's webinar was to start to build on the platform of training we've had through Zoom academies, to start to focus on the quality of contests. Quality is what really matters, because quality helps increase member satisfaction, passion for the contest and things like that. And so I'm really pleased that this group today has gathered, and I'd really like to thank the trainers that are going to help. We've got not only Sarinka, Will Feeks out there, Moira O'Brien and Gearoid Murphy, to name a few, and there's plenty more, I'm sure, that deserve credit and recognition. So with quality in mind and the importance of developing quality, and also picking up the tips that I picked up at the World Championship of Speaking, where I was a judge in the semi-finals, I hope that comes across today. And I'd like Danny Banks to now be Toastmaster of the meeting. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And again, a big welcome to everybody for turning up tonight. As Daniel said, the point of tonight is to help you put on a quality contest. We're going to look at 3 areas: the Zoom master role, the judge, the chief judge, and the chief contest chair. My hope is that you will pick up tips on how to run your meetings, and especially how to run, those meetings on Zoom, which is the world we're in at the moment. So we're going to have the 3 presentations, and then at the end there will be opportunities for questions and answers. If you could write your questions in the chat, I will then read out your questions and we'll try and get through as many as possible. Tonight is for you, to help you feel comfortable in running a contest in the 2020-21 year. So I will move on. Our first person tonight, our first leader tonight, is going to be Moira O'Brien. I think that's correct. Moira, as many of you will know, she's been a Toastmaster since 2014. She achieved a DTM 4 years later. She has founded 2 clubs, Lee Valley Speakers and Par Excellence Advanced Speakers, and currently she is a member of Lee Valley Speakers, Blarney Toastmasters and Firebirds Collective Online Club. She has had as one of her roles photographer and filmmaker, and in that role she was the producer for the talk show for talkers on Irish Radio International, where she now co-presents that program. And as you will know, Moira has been very involved in the forming of the Zoom Academy. She's been supporting and training Toastmasters in how to use Zoom to deliver contests, to deliver ordinary meetings. She has also acted as Zoom Master for countless clubs, area and division contests. And now I will hand over to Moira to share this experience with you. So please help me welcome Moira.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can all hear me well. We're going to go through 3 or 4 items that are of importance on Zoom mastering for contest. Zoom mastering for contest is more difficult than doing it for an ordinary club meeting, because there are a few extra things that we have to pay attention to. Now, the first thing that I must say is that you should request, when you're sending out the invitation to your contests, that everybody makes sure that they update to the latest version of Zoom. This avoids any potential problems with the various Zooms not being on the same level. The first most important thing is that all participants must be muted until called upon to speak by the contest chair. This is down to the Zoom master who is in the contest part of the meeting to look after, and that would be that contest, that Zoom master's major role. Now, there are three Zoom masters are required, well, a minimum of 3. The first one is the host, and the host will stay in the lobby. I'll explain what the lobby is in a second. He or she will control members joining the meeting and allocates contestants to the contest room. The second one is the contest breakout room. You would say the Sergeant at Arms in a normal contest. They will manage, the Sergeant at Arms, yes, one of the 2 Sergeant at Arms in the contest breakout room to manage muting and spotlighting as necessary. A third one to be in the contestants room to manage, this is for a table topics or evaluation contest, to make sure that the rules are obeyed. The breakout rooms are as follows. Now, first of all, the main meeting, the part of the meeting that we're in at the moment, we will call the lobby for contest purposes. So everybody comes into the lobby, and if they are contestants, they will be passed to a contestants room. I'm going to share my screen now, and you'll see the layout of the rooms. So here you will see I have created 6 rooms here. And let's look at the creation of the rooms. The first thing, when you create the rooms, I suggest that you assign automatically. You can assign manually, but it's a lot more efficient if you assign automatic. Sorry, I beg your pardon. You need to, I've got that completely wrong. You need to assign them manually, because you are going to do the assignment, not allow Zoom to do the assignment. Beg pardon on that one. Within the breakout rooms themselves, we have the contest room, we have the contestants room, which is where we're going to put evaluation and table topics contestants. We have the judges room for the judges to confer. We have a counters room. We have a spare and 2 spares. Spares are always useful. You can create them on the fly by clicking add room, and a room will be created. There's no problem with doing that. But it's good to have a couple ready so that you can put people in if there's a problem. For example, if somebody has issues with their audio or their video and you need to help them sort it out, you can put them into one of these spare breakout rooms and they can do as whatever is necessary there. Right. What happens with the contestants room? Well, first of all, you have the lobby. Everybody comes into the meeting in the lobby. The host, I don't know, we'll call him the Zoom master, the main Zoom master, who will be the host of the meeting, will assign people into either the contest room, or if it's a table topics or evaluation contest, into the contestants room. You might also want to put the judges into a judges room so that the chief judge can do his briefing. The contest chair would do the briefing for the contestants in the contestants room. Everybody else you put into the contest room itself. During the evaluation of table topics contests, the contestants will be put back into the contestants' room and will be maintained there by the Sergeant at Arms. When it is necessary to bring a contestant into the contest room, the Sergeant at Arms in the contest room will need to be in contact with the main Zoom master, who will be in the lobby, by WhatsApp or by phone or by whatever means you agree before the meeting, because it is only the main Zoom master who is capable of moving people from one room to another. So that particular person, that host, will be moving people. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a few people into a breakout room and show you how they can be moved from one room to another. So I'm going to assign into the contest room.
Moira, you are muted.
Sorry, how did I mute myself? Apologies. Don't know how that happened. Okay, I'll assign now Gearoid Murphy into the contestants room, and I'll find somebody else who's another host I can put in there.
Put me, Moira Sarinka.
Yeah, okay. So,
okay, sorry, Maura, you couldn't go back to how you actually created that because you were actually muted for quite a while.
was I?
You were. I missed the start of that operation.
Okay, so what I'm doing is, sorry, where do you want me to go back from? Creating the rooms or after you've created the rooms?
Creating the rooms.
Okay, creating the rooms. I created these in advance because I didn't want to take up too much time just creating it. But when you go into, when the host clicks on breakout rooms, they get a screen like this. Create breakout rooms. Well, you can say how many breakout rooms you want to create, and you should click the assign manually because you want to physically assign them to the breakout rooms yourself. You do not, under any circumstances, click let participants choose the room or assign automatically, as I have on this particular screenshot. Once you're in there, you can add rooms and rename them, whatever. And you can delete rooms. Okay, so I have pre-created a contest room, a contestants room, judges room, counters room, spare, and 2 spares. The 2 spares being so that if somebody has a problem with their audio or their video, a Sergeant at Arms or a co-host can put them into a breakout room and sort them out in there without disturbing everybody else. I'm now assigning people to rooms. And as you see, if I click on the assign button, I get a drop down list of the whole people of all the people available. And all you do is to tick an individual to assign them to the room. Okay, so we now have a contest room and a contestants room. So I'm going to open those rooms. You see, I get a whole list of people who are unassigned. So obviously those would all have been put in the meeting room or the contestant room. But in order to move somebody out of one room to the other, let's take Gearoid. I'm going to move Gearoid from the contestants room to the contest room. And I'm going to do that only when the Sergeant at Arms within the contest room has said, it's now time for contestant number 2, for example. So I click on that and Gearoid will automatically be moved, I hope. Yep, there he is. So he's now in the contest room and he can carry on and do his bit. So I'm going to close the rooms now so everybody can come back to the main room.
Moira, I have a quick question. Is it okay to ask it now?
Yes, please do.
Can you do a mass move? If you have to move, say, 6 or 7 people, do you just tick their names and do a mass move, or do you have to do it one by one?
You literally tick their names. Unfortunately, I set this up. I should have shown you the settings. We'll have to wait until the breakout rooms close in 30 seconds. Any more questions whilst we're waiting for that to happen? Because I've
Yeah, Moira, can I ask a quick question? It's Paul Davey.
Please do.
Can I ask why you would set up a separate breakout room for the contest as opposed to having the contest in the lobby?
Okay, there's a very good reason for that, and I'll explain it in words of one syllable. If a contestant is booted out, loses their connection, and wants to rejoin the meeting, as soon as they rejoin the meeting, they will come into the main room, which we've entitled the lobby. If the contest is taking place in the main room, that contestant, who it may not be their turn, it may be, you know, contestant number 8, and you're only on contestant number 1 in your table topics, and suddenly this contestant can hear what's happening in the contest. So this is the reason for keeping a separate contest room. You're ensuring that the integrity of the contest is maintained. Now, there is an issue. Obviously, if a contestant loses connection whilst they are delivering their speech or their evaluation or their table, whatever this happens to be, then you do have an issue. And this is, I think, and this is obviously up to the local chief judge and contest chair to make the decision. But if it's in a table topics or an evaluation contest, I think that if a contestant is booted, then they really can't continue. If they have an audio issue, then that's another matter. And I think Gearoid is going to cover that in his presentation. But if the contestant is kicked out of the meeting, it's going to take a measurable amount of time for them to rejoin the meeting. If they were halfway through their presentation, it isn't really fair that they could restart their presentation. So I think they would have to be disqualified. But that's obviously going to be a local rule. It's not going to be something that's imposed by us.
Moira,
yes.
Moira, can I just ask a brief question? You said, I'm now going to close the rooms.
Yes.
By you closing the rooms, does everyone automatically come back into the lobby room then?
Correct. So the fact that I've closed the room, that's for this meeting only. Obviously, you would not do that in the contest until the contest was over.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
Okay, now I can now show you the one thing that I've missed, and that was this little setting here, which is the usual settings icon at the bottom left of the screen there. Click that, and this is what we should be setting. We should not allow participants to return to the main session at any time, because we don't want them to have any control over themselves. We want to automatically move all assigned participants into the breakout rooms. That means that when we open the rooms and we've assigned somebody to a room, they will be moved automatically. They don't have to click anything. And I would untick the auto close breakout rooms. You don't want to have that. Countdown to closing breakouts, you can set that to what you want. 60 minutes is rather long. I would normally set it to about 30 seconds. Sorry, 60 seconds, not 30 seconds. So that's the settings. You just tick the automatically move and tick the countdown after breakout room, nothing more. Okay, any more questions? Because I'm sure I must be way over my time. No, everybody happy? I shall defer back to Danny Banks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moira. Making a very complicated system sound very straightforward. So thank you. I shall be trying that out tomorrow. Now we are going to look at the role of the contest chair. And we have to do that William Feek. Now, William is no stranger to contests. He's competed twice at the district level, both the international and humorous speech contest. Currently, he is Division S Director, Scotland. And William has told me that his favourite role is contest chair. So that is exactly what he's going to talk about tonight. So please help me welcome William. William.
Thank you, Danny. And I'll just activate my screen share. Can everybody see that okay? Have a thumbs up from somebody? Perfect. Well, I'm particularly excited to talk about the role of the contest chair. As Danny said, it is my favorite role in Toastmasters, I think. I've been in quite a few contests as a contestant and I like winning them, but it's generally quite a stressful process. And I think the contest chair is a much more enjoyable role. And if you haven't been a contest chair before, I thoroughly recommend it. Now, I was kind of asked to do this at the very last minute at 8 o'clock this morning, so I have whipped up some slides to help guide myself and you through the process of what is involved with the contest chair. I think it's good to keep things informal as well, so as with the previous presentation, if you have any questions or comments, please just say so. So like any solicitous Toastmaster, I'm going to cover 3 things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the roles and responsibilities of the contest chair, the sort of nuts and bolts of the role. I'm going to then go over some general contest procedure and the difference between in-person and Zoom contests. I think Zoom is particularly relevant at this moment in time. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the difference between club contests and the contests at area levels and above, because there is a difference, especially when it comes to formalities. Now, when I was putting the slides together to start out today, I was trying to think of what are the key responsibilities of the contest chair. So I've kind of distilled them into 4 things. Brief the contestants, introduce the speakers, interview the contestants and fill in time. Now I've underlined fill in time because that is a very large role of the contest chair, especially in club and area contests, and then announce the results. So brief the contestants, introduce the speakers, interview the contestants and announce the results. Quite simple. Now, the briefing is the kind of first thing that the contest chair requires to do. Now, usually this is done before the contest at the club level, and I'll get to that towards the end of the presentation. It might be better to do the briefing once the meeting has started. And the thing about the contestants briefing, which is different from the judges briefing, is it's not confidential. So the audience can be involved in the briefing, and sometimes that's a good idea. The judges briefing, for instance, all the judges have to be anonymous. So this is very much has to take place in a different room and nobody's supposed to know who the judges are. The contestants are required to fill in 2 forms, which I'll get to in a second. And the briefing, the contest chair is required to draw the speaker's order. So some system needs to be in place, which is slightly more difficult on Zoom. In person, we just picked numbers out of a hat. On Zoom, there's various ways we can draw the speaking order. And also the contestant briefing requires to define the speaker area. Now, that is slightly more complicated in Zoom setting, but we'll get onto that in a second. So the forms. Now, first of all, this form here is the speech contestant profile, and all contestants must fill one of these in. And I think this is the most important form for you to have as a contest chair, because it is extremely useful, because the form requires the contestant's name. So you have the contestant's name on a piece of paper. I don't really think the address and all that information is particularly important. And when I've been a contest chair, which is, I've lost count of the amount of contests I've chaired, I've never asked people to fill that part in. The speech title, very important. So this piece of paper has the contest name and the speech title. And there are some questions on here. What inspires you most? What is your favorite quote? Interests, hobbies, noticeable accomplishments. So this kind of information is very important for the interviews, which is part of the filling in time. So of all the forms, whilst you're doing the role of contest chair, this is really important. And I suggest you clutch onto these forms for dear life, because they are very useful when you're doing the contest. The other form that's required is what I call the small print form. And here I've just got a screen grab of it in very small print. You don't, we're not going to read through all the form, but what this form is essentially, it's a contract. You need to sign it. And it's basically saying that the contestant must be a paid up member of a club in good standing. So the contestant must have paid their dues at the time of the contest, and the club must have registered at least 8 people to be in good standing with Toastmasters International. This is also a contract to say that your speech must be substantially original. Now, I don't want to get into too much detail about what that means, because I think possibly the chief judge may go into that, but we can discuss this at the questions at the end if we want to go into that in more detail. Now, also another interesting thing that happens when you sign this contest that people may not be aware is you're declaring your allegiance at area level. So what does that mean? Well, let's say, for the sake of argument, and this is a true story, it's based on a true story, that you are a very keen competitor in contests and you enter 2 clubs at the contest level, at the club level, and you get first place at both of those clubs. So you may be playing some tactics. Now, technically speaking, you can hold off until the last minute, until you've signed this form, to declare which club you're going to represent. So if you're playing a tactical game, and I don't think this is very sportsmanlike, but it does happen, as soon as you sign this form, you're declaring your eligibility for that club, so for that particular area contest, which means you're not going to be eligible to represent another club. So it's been asked in the past, when do you have to say what club you're going to represent? And my understanding of the rules is that when you sign this contract, you are declaring which club you are going to stand for. So that is the small print form, as I call it. But the most important form for the contest chair is this speech contestant profile. Now, at the briefing, I mentioned that you need to draw the speaking order. So they have to have some sort of fair system in place to get a number for each speaker. Now, there's been various suggestions of what can be done online. You know, people have come up with some complicated ideas about having a random number generator or something like that. I just basically put numbers into a cup and hold them up in front of the camera. Usually there's a list of speakers on an agenda or something. I just go through that list and allocate them a number. Very important, I think, is write the number of the speaker's order on their profile sheet. So go back to the most important form you can have. You write their number on the top of this piece of paper. So you have a piece of paper with their speaking order, their name, and their speech title, and some information about the contestant, so you can fill in some time later on. So if you have the pile of forms in their speaking order in your hand, you have all the information required to execute the contest. So this is the most important form that you can have doing the contest chair. Very important, once the contest starts and the judges have returned from their judges briefing, which I'm sure the chief judge briefing will talk about, the chief judge training, sorry, we'll talk about in the next session, you need to announce this order to all the judges so they can write the number down on their ballot forms. Now, the judges are supposed to be anonymous, so you can read out the order of the contestants, and then the judges know what the order. So that is the bit about the briefing. You also need to define the speaking area. Now, on the the good old days where we were meeting in person, the speaking area would be a stage or the front of the room, and that's quite obvious really what the speaking area is. Now, before this coronavirus lockdown happened, the rules stated that the contest should be done in person. Now, Toastmasters issued an amendment to those rules that said that it could be done online. And this guy that you see in this picture here is kind of the sort of the poster or the pin-up of what the speaking area is on Zoom. So it says, this quote is taken directly from the sort of emergency amendment that Toastmasters did to the rules. The contest chair explains the designated speaking area for the contest. They must be set to ensure that each contestant's gestures and facial expressions will be captured by their camera. So when I brief contestants, I say that the contestant needs to adjust their setup so they look like this man in the picture. The upper part of the body is visible, and it's up to them to use this frame to their advantage, just like a speaker would use a stage in a real life meeting. Now, why is this important? Well, imagine if you were very serious about being a contestant and you hired a cameraman, and I don't know, the cameraman followed you around your house or something. Clearly you'd have a advantage compared to everybody else. So this kind of puts everybody in a level playing field. This is the speaking area. And as part of the briefing, the speaking area needs to be defined. So the briefing is complete. You are in the room or the virtual room, as the case may be, and the contest is about to start. So before the contest starts, I think it's very important to first of all introduce the chief judge to everybody. The normal judges, the voting judges, are anonymous, but you can introduce the chief judge and say, this is the man in charge of the judges, and this person or woman, as the case may be, will set the benchmark for fair play. I also think it's very important to get the timer to verify the timings and the signaling, just to make sure everybody understands how that works, and the timings, and make sure the timers understand the timing. So for instance, a table topic, you will be disqualified at 2 minutes 30. A speech, 7 minutes 30, you'll be disqualified. So ensure that everybody on that particular contest understands the timing and the disqualification. Explain the procedures, and we'll get into the procedures of different types of contests in the next couple of slides, and ask if there are any questions. Do the contestants have any questions? And when everybody's happy, you can start the contest. Now, there are obviously differences between each type of contest. The contest coming up or the contest season that started right now is the table topics and humorous speech. So for the table topics contest, you will obviously need to explain that the contestants will leave the room. The sergeant at arms will remove them from the room. And it's very important to treat all contestants the same. So what I do is I say to them that I'm going to read their question to them twice and only twice. So there may, for instance, be a time, and this has happened to me in the past when I've chaired a contest where the contestant was asked halfway through, what was the question again? That's not allowed. I'll explain that at the beginning. I will read the question twice and only twice. Now, I was just speaking to Jerry Dunn earlier today, and he reminded me that the rules have recently changed. So you have to read the person's name, then you have to tell them the topic or the question, then you have to tell them the topic again, and then their name. So name, topic, topic, name. So that is a standardized format. You are treating everybody the same. And explain that the timing will start with their first interaction with the audience. I believe the exact words in the rules are the first verbal or non-verbal interaction with the audience. So that's the table topics. The evaluation contest, it's very similar. The contestants have to leave the room. Now, what is very important is when the test speaker has done their speech, the evaluation contestants will be able to leave the room and fill out their prescribed piece of paper for the evaluations. So you have 5 minutes to fill in at this particular time. So as I said at the beginning of this, part or a large part of the contest chair role is being able to fill in time. Now, there are different ways you can fill in time at this particular part of the contest. You can interview the test speaker, or possibly you can invite the Vice President of Education up to plan the next meeting, or it never hurts to have some table topics up your sleeve just to fill in some time if you need it. But you will need to fill in that 5 minutes of time whilst the evaluators are out of the room. The timing, again, is with the first interaction with the audience. So evaluation contest and table topics contest are similar in that the contestants are out of the room and you will need a sergeant at arms to bring them back in. So the speech contest, and this is the humorous and the international speech, are both pretty much identical to run in a contest. You introduce the speaker in the prescribed way, so the name, speech title, name. And it's very important to treat everybody the same. I was at one contest and the contest chair introduced a rather prominent Toastmaster by saying, and the next speaker needs no introduction. That is against the rules because you could potentially be giving that person an unfair advantage. Name, speech title, name. Everybody gets treated the same. And again, explain to them that their timing will start with the first interaction with the audience. Slight differences on Zoom, and this is what I've called the Zoom protocols. And this, I think, is very important because you may have problems where people may be muted and that kind of ruins the beginning of their speech. So when I chair a contest on Zoom, I go through a very thorough procedure to make sure everybody is set up before they are participating in their part of the contest. Exactly the same for every contestant. First of all, I'll ask the contestant to pin the timer. So can you confirm that you have pinned the timer? And then I'll do a sound check. Can you say testing, 1, 2, 3, words to that effect, just to make sure they're not on mute. And also, I think it's important to note, and this is certainly important at the area, the division, the district contest, the rules say that everybody should have their videos off and certainly their sound muted. And this is in the rules, and I believe this is to preserve bandwidth. Now, the club contests, which I'll get onto at the end of this presentation, possibly a bit more relaxed, but certainly at the higher levels, everybody should have their videos switched off and the sound muted. So on all the contests, the table topics, evaluation, and the speeches, the contestants should only see the timer and a sea of blank faces. So that's what I call the Zoom protocols. Just make sure that they're not on mute and they've pinned the timer. Now, time for the judges. After every speaker, you need to request a minute for the judges to fill out their ballot. So once the speaker has finished, you say, can I have a minute on the clock for the judges, please? And after the final speaker, what I say when I'm chairing a contest is the speakers may take a moment to complete their ballots. Now, I think the rules say that they can have as long as they want, but if you say that, they take even longer. So I say they may take a moment. Once the contest is finished, the counters and the chief judge then leave the room, and it's very unpredictable how long they're going to be away. They may come back in a minute, they may come back at 20 minutes. During this time, you need to fill in some time. Now, the standard method of filling in the time is the interviews. So you could interview the contestants with the information on that form. Remember, I said the most important form we have as a contest chair is the contestant's profile, has their speaking order, their name, their speech title, and some information about them. And in real life, we present them with a certificate of participation. Whether that happens or not on Zoom is, well, we're getting better with Zoom. So I've chaired 2 club contests recently, and we were paper-free, and we made the joke that your certificate of participation is in the post, so they'll probably be waiting for them for a long time. If the contestant interviews are not long enough, and the judges you finish the interviews and the judges are still away deliberating and counting their votes, you need to have something up your sleeve to fill out time. it could be a good idea to speak to the Vice President of Education, the area director, the district director, whatever level, and say, have you got any announcements you want to make? So for instance, if you're at the club contest, does the VPE want to do the roles for the next meeting? There are various ways you can kill time, and they're quite a good way of doing that. I also think every contest, I think it's a good idea to have some table topics up your sleeve, or better yet, to sort of mix it up, appoint somebody as a sort of entertainment table topics master, because they could be away for 20 minutes and you just have to kill time, and you need something to kill the time. Table topics are a foolproof way of doing that. So once the judges finally come into the room, they give you the results. Now, in person, they'd probably hand you the certificates. These days, it's usually done by WhatsApp or message. The chief judge is required to state whether there have been any disqualifications, and I imagine they will probably go into that later on. Once you've been given the results, you can announce the results. There's various rules about how many you're supposed to announce, depending on how many people, whether you announce the first place or the first, second, and third place. We can get into that later on in this session. So you announce the results, and then the contest ends, and that's really all there is to the role. I finally, before I finish, want to talk about the difference between club and area contests. I think there's a huge difference with club contests. At club level, I think the very important thing is guests may be present. So people new to Toastmasters may be sitting in the room or the virtual room, and they won't have a clue what's going on. And you really need to think about what's going on in the guest's mind. Also, the number of contestants is unknown. The last contest I chaired a week or two ago, we had quite a lot of table topics, but there was no humor speeches. There was one scheduled and they pulled out. Now, I managed to persuade that person to come back in, and somebody else did an impromptu speech. So we went from 0 speakers to 2 speakers, and it shows you what anything can happen at the club level. As you get further up the tree, you tend to know who's going to be in the contest. And also, you've got to remember at the club level, some of these people are doing it for the very first time as well. So you really need to keep these things in your mind. At area level and above, it's usually more experienced Toastmasters. There's not usually sort of guests, first time people in the room. The contestants are usually known, although I said, if somebody's representing 2 clubs, they've got to choose which club that they're representing at the area contest. And absolutely above the contest, the contestants are definitely experienced, because they would not be at an area contest if they had not won the club contest. So they've definitely done it before. So I want to kind of finish off by talking about guests at club contests, because I think this is something we could really improve on in terms of quality. Contests can potentially give a bad impression to guests. Now, why is that? Well, generally, we're quite good at running Toastmasters meetings, but contests can sometimes be a bit of a shambles. So say the meeting starts at 7 o'clock and everybody is running around with forms and, doing this and that and trying to work out who's going to be a judge at the last minute. And the guests are sitting there thinking, what on earth is going on? I mean, I'm here to learn about communication and leadership, and I'm not seeing very much of it. So I think it's probably a good idea to start the meeting on time. If the contest, which is, the club contest is a normal Toastmasters meeting, say it starts at 7 o'clock, I think it's very important for the contest chair to start the meeting at 7 o'clock. So get the judges out of the room for their briefing. And there's nothing stopping you at this stage briefing the contestants and the audience together. I think that works very well, because you are explaining to the guests who are going to be potentially joining Toastmasters and to the contestants all the rules and stuff, so everybody knows what's going on. And I think that works really well. Explain, explain, explain. I can't stress this enough. Remember the guests. What was going through your mind the first time you went to a Toastmasters meeting? Imagine if that was during the chaos of a contest. You will need to explain to the guests, this is not a normal meeting, this is a contest. You need to tell them what a contest is. And as I said, you can make this part of the briefing. A briefing is not confidential like the judges' briefing, so you could involve everybody together. And club contests tend to be less organized than when you go higher up the tree. At the division contest, the district contest, you know who's going to be competing well in advance. You can have all the briefings before. Club contests tend to be a bit more disorganized, and it's the contest chair's responsibility to manage the meeting just like a Toastmaster. They're also a contest chair, but they have to make the meeting run smoothly and professionally. So that is me. That is my presentation on the contest chair role. I hope this has been some use for you. And I would just like to summarize by going over the 4 key responsibilities of the contest chair that I said at the beginning. Brief the contestants, introduce the speakers, interview the contestants, fill in time, always have tricks up your sleeve to fill in time, announce the results. And as I said, it's my favorite role, and I very much encourage anybody that hasn't done it to get involved in chairing contests. It's a really fun thing to do. Thank you, everybody, and I will hand the floor back to Danny.
Sorry, William, this is Marion Brennan here. Could I just ask you one question before you go? Thank you, that was very, very good. Or just something that I have noticed myself. I was a judge recently in a doing it for another club. I wouldn't have been familiar with the people in the club, the contestants or anything. And I found that some of the names were very unusual. So when the contestants were being called out in there, it wasn't very clear to hear exactly what the name was, and you were trying to nearly guess they were coming so fast, you know. So I think it's a good idea if they'd actually spell the name as well.
I think that's an excellent point, and I can't stress enough the importance of the profile form. And during the briefing, it's different maybe at the club when you know everybody, but if you're chairing contests higher up the tree, maybe you've never met the person before, especially if somebody has a what to you would be an unpronounceable name or a name you're not familiar with, is to make sure that you're pronouncing the names correctly. But I think that's a very important and helpful point. Thank you.
Okay,
William, can I just, sorry, Danny, can I just ask you one very brief, Danny or William, thank you very much. Can you email the slides to us, or to me anyway?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, to be honest, I just whipped these up today.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's lovely and simple.
I'm happy to email the slides across. I'll put them, is there a Dropbox or something you can put them in, Danny?
Yeah, if you email them to me, I'll make sure people get them.
I'll do that.
I'm sure there's some way we've got of emailing out to people, because we'll have everybody's email address. Anyway, thank you very much for that, William.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, William.
I had a couple of questions, Danny. Can I ask them now or later?
Can we ask them later?
Okay, that's fine.
Because I want to get Gearoid's presentation on course. So if we can ask them at the end, that would be great. Thank you.
No bother, no bother.
Okay, so for the chief judge, we've got Gearoid Murphy. Now, he joined Carlo Toastmasters in April 2016, achieved his DTM in June this year. He's currently VPE for the club and is also a member of Tina Healy Club, Newbridge, and recently helped charter online club One Country, One World. He's serving his second term as an Area 40 director, having done the same role last year. He's thrilled and honoured to have been served as a chief judge in many contests at the recent district, semi-finals and final. It's this role that he will now outline to us, so please help me welcome Gearoid to the floor.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Danny. I'm just going to share my slides now. So tonight I'm presenting the role of Chief Judge, and what I'm going to try and do is incorporate some of the old with some of the new being Zoom and taking the Chief Judge to that level. And I'd also like to incorporate some of Daniel Sanders' tips from his recent World Championship experiences. So when you take on the role of Chief Judge, what are your goals? Well, as Daniel said, to run a quality contest. A quality contest means that we provide the best judging possible. provide a good organization to our contests, and as such they involve no time wasting where moments pass that somebody isn't interacting or you're waiting on something to happen. So what we're striving to do is fairness to all the contestants, fairness to the audience. Like Toastmasters, one of our mottos is, our core values is to deliver excellence. Again, we'll try and eliminate the bias to give everyone a fair chance and a fair hearing when they perform at the contest. The main role of a chief judge is to ensure that his team, which includes the judges, the timers, the counters, and also tiebreaker judge, they're well briefed on what their roles involve come the contest. And most of all, deliver the correct winner. Prior to the contest, when you are appointed chief judge, you firstly will need to establish who your team is. This may be organised for you in the club, that the organisers will find your judges, timers, counters, or it may be left up to you to find your judges and your team. But it's very important to establish that as early as possible and have a backup plan, that you have a chief judge backup, that you have resources just in case somebody gets disconnected. So we'll come back to that later. It's important online that you have all contact information for all your role players. And that means having their emails and their numbers, because you'll see that we will use emails and WhatsApps in running the online contests. Not drifting too far from the old physical meetings, but you can send out all the relevant forms in advance. So to judges, that can be the judge's certificate of eligibility and the particular ballots they will need for the types of contests you're running at any particular time. Timing sheets to the timers, ballot, as I'll talk about later, ballot sheets to the counters, and that's mandatory now that the ballot counters get a copy of those. And to establish what form of communication you'll use during the contest. Now, you could use Zoom chat, but I advise to use something alternative like WhatsApp and create groups among the organisers and among the different teams on the day. And most importantly, to study the rule book. A good contest always comes from those who are knowledgeable about the rule book, and to educate yourself on any differences from year to year that rule changes that have been applied. Which leads nicely to the rule changes for this year, for 2020-21. The outstanding and most notable rule change is referencing another contestant, or as we would call callbacks to their speech. This is now grounds for disqualification. And I've seen it in the past where a contestant will reach back and say something about maybe the other person's speech, a quote, or name that person. This is now grounds for disqualification, and I'll come back to that later. There are some other small changes like eligibility for contestants, that if you were joined prior to the rollout of Pathways and you had your 6 CC speeches done, you would still be eligible to be a judge greater than club level, or to take part in the international speech contest. One other thing, you can now take part in as many club contests as you want, as long as you're a member of those clubs. But as William pointed out earlier on, you would have to pledge allegiance to your area when the time comes and what club you're going to represent. And as I mentioned, ballot counters will be provided with a copy of the counters tally sheet. Okay, one big difference is that we cannot sign these forms in person now prior to the meeting at the briefings. So what we do is, when sending out the forms, we will give the option, various options for the judges to complete and send back their signatures. So one option is the digital signature. that if you can get the PDF format of the file, there's now one out there that allows you to edit it and to put in your signature and the date and fill in all the details. You can return that. The option is there then if you have the pleasure of having a printer, to print it out, sign and scan or photograph the eligibility form and send back to the chief judge. Again, when it comes to the ballots on the particular contest day, it's just very, very important that that they're filled in correctly, like in the old way. They're also signed. Now, depending on the chief judge and the level of the contest, some may be particular and want a proper signature and is scanned in and sent on. Some will accept a digital signature, and some will just be happy to get the 1, 2, 3. So I would say down at club level that would be okay. But as you progress, you will want to get the proper signature and the lower part of the ballot. Now, if you scan the full ballot paper and you have your tally scores as it's progressing on the top, and you submit that is grounds to have your vote deemed invalid. So it's very important to crop the bottom section, whatever method you're using to send back to the chief judge. Again, it's important to work out the voting system. Not everybody will be on WhatsApp, but as long as each voting judge works out a system with the chief judge, you can have the options of email where the judge will email the chief judge and the counters and submit the ballot that way. Or you could have the WhatsApp group where they can take a photograph of the ballot and send it. So it's a kind of live, and each of the role players, chief judge and ballot counters, will receive those. So the same applies that come the briefing, that most things apply, like bias, that you're not going to go against the age, the sex, the religion of speakers, or you're not going to favour anyone in particular just because they're a club mate. So all these rules still apply, but the extra ones that you would need to throw in there are, even if a contestant has bad audio or video, it's not grounds to judge them on that. It's particularly to judge them on the performance on the day. Now, William mentioned earlier, standing or sitting. This again is up to the contest chair and chief judge at any particular contest to arrange beforehand. So it might not be possible for all the contestants to stand. Somebody may have a physical disability and cannot do so, or it's just they may not have the technology possible to do it. So again, don't judge on that particular part. And the speaking area and distance, this can be worked out. The speaking area is generally what's in view of your camera. You can promote that the contestants try their best to fit in the top part of the body. It may not always be possible. There might be some sound quality loss due to the microphone being a little far away. But again, this can be worked out in advance. And once all contestants are happy, that would be the main point. And again, judge by the performance that you see on the day. And as judges, you do not have to concentrate on the times. The timers will take care of that job. Possible ways to eliminate bias. So one way I always found was to take notes, just little notes that what stood out in each particular speech. If you have quite a few contestants taking part, it may be quite easy to forget, say, speaker 1 and speaker 2. So it's nice to have notes taken on all the speakers that you can refer back to. And another method is to give a plus and minus. So what a speaker did well or what he didn't do well. And at the end, when you're tallying, you can take that into consideration. One very useful tip is to print out the ballot, and once you receive the, again, I meant to say that you would in a briefing hopefully receive the contestant's speaking order. If not, you will receive it before the contest. But so write the speaking order from right to left rather than from left to right on the top of the ballot. And as each speaker progresses, just fold that speaker so you can't refer back to what scores you gave the first speaker, say, for example. And keep doing that until the last speaker, and it just gives you some fairness when it comes to marking your scores. One thing is a misconception is that a speech, it's not, the speech contest, it's not an emotional speech, an inspirational speech. It is based on an original speech. So it's to kind of ignore the emotions and to judge the speech on its own merit. And again, quality of the delivery, it might be a sad story, it might be a funny story, but again, it may not be the greatest quality of speech. So again, it's important to judge and refer back to the judging criteria for marking your scores. And then finally, you will tally your scores after the last speaker and fill in your ballot. The important thing, picking your 1, 2, 3, there's no ties like a joint second place, and it's 1, 2, 3, and just to make sure that the ballot that you're sending in is signed. The counting process, as William says, that when the counting process takes place, we will wait for the ballots to come in, and then myself as chief judge or the chief judge of the day and the ballot counters will be moved out into a breakout room. Each of us, my preferred method is each of us will have a copy of the ballot in front of us. We will then mark our scores, and at the end of that we will concur that our scores add up, and each of us have the same 1, 2, 3 for the contest. So some will rotate that role, that a ballot counter can call out the scores and mark, but I think just the important thing, double check that you have the scores correct, and that if you do have ties, that you have received a tiebreaker ballot to split them, and that's the only way you will split them from the tiebreaker ballot. At the end, you will fill in the contest winners form and mark any time disqualifications. You will check with the timers that were there any eliminations. So you will check that on your form. You will notify the contest chair, and the contest chair can then ready themselves to read out the results. Now, in some cases, the contest chair may ask the chief judge to read them out, or may ask an official, like say a DLT guest or a division or area director, to do so. Now we'll come to the protests and disqualifications. Again, the top two are familiar. Protests can take place on eligibility and originality, but now we add referencing another contestant's speech into the mix. So again, if that happens, you write protest on your ballot. That will be picked up by the chief judge. Protests can be lodged only by judges and contestants, and only to the chief judge and the contest chair. Should that happen, sorry, I'll just get to the last point. Again, do not let the audience influence any of the roll holders. So if an audience member protests, it must not be considered. So the only people that will handle that is the chief judge and contest chair, and the judges and the contestant. Again, the same as in the past, the contestant will be given an opportunity to come into a breakout room. So a breakout room will be created, and the chief judge, the voting judges, will hear the case of that contestant. Then once that's done, the contestants will leave the breakout room and there will be a vote among the judges, and should the person be disqualified would depend on the larger amount of the vote agreeing so. And one last thing, the contest chair can disqualify a contestant on the basis of eligibility. So just that is very important from the point of view before a contest. It did happen earlier this year where a contestant had to be told just before the start of a contest that their club was ineligible. So the person, even though it was a paid up member, couldn't take part. Just want to talk lastly about disconnections. Okay, disconnections could happen to anybody in a meeting, so it's very important. The main role holders in a meeting, like the organizers, Zoo Master, Chief Judge, Contest Chair, and did I say Zoo Master? Sorry, organizers, but that there is somebody to step into those roles at all stages in case somebody drops out. And it has happened in the past, but it is very important that you have a backup and that there's a smooth transition so that anything go wrong. What I suggest too with voting judges is if have the maximum or recommended amount of judges, but do have maybe 2 extra spare judges voting on the day. Now you can have their votes count, or you can have them as backup votes. So if a judge happens to fall off at the radar or drop out of the meeting, that you could open another judge's ballot at the end to make up the quota of ballots. And in a case of a judge dropping out, if a judge is not in the Zoom room as the contest progresses, that judge will not be eligible to vote, and their ballot would have to be discarded. So it's very important that they notify the chief judge immediately if they should drop off. Again, it's something we touched on. Should a contestant experience audio problems? Well, audio problems, if there would be a contestant room at the start, and hopefully that all contestants would have checked their equipment, their sound, their video, and would be all good to go. But it has happened where bandwidth has kicked in, or the audio sound problems have gone wrong just at the start. But in that case, it would be up to the chief judge how to as to find a solution. Now, if a person started and was unheard, I would recommend that that person, the chief judge, stop the contest, stop that person, see if they can fix the problem, and then if they're given a certain amount of time, allow that person to restart. But during a contest like Table Topics, if it's like 1 minute into the contest and that person starts experiencing sound problems, that person would have to finish off. You couldn't stop them and allow them to restart. It would give them extra time on that topic, and a decision would have to be made by the chief judge at that point, either to disqualify or let them just finish and be allowed allow the judges to give a vote on them anyway. But I'll take questions and answers on that point later on. It's something that has never happened to me, luckily enough, but I'd be open to take questions after my presentation. Just to end the presentation, just before you're sending back the results to the contest chair, were there any disqualifications? You've checked with the timers. Referencing another speech, originality, these were just the checklist. Providing winners for the first, determining who's going to announce it. One common mistake that has been made before is to read downwards on the contest winners list. It's 3, 2, 1 going downwards. Some contest chairs have read it 1, 2, 3 and announced the wrong results. So just be very careful on that one. And just at the end, use the full tiebreaker list if necessary to sort out the full list of notification of winners. And at the end, destroy your WhatsApp groups, emails, and anything containing information on the ballots, and make sure that all your team, judges, timers, counters, do not disclose any of the contest deals to any other members of the club or members who attended. And just after the contestants, after the winners are announced, there's no objections, that result stands and cannot be reversed. So thanks for listening to me. I'll welcome any questions later on, and I'll hand back to Danny.
Okay, thank you very much, Gearoid. And I have to say, and a special thanks, because I know he's not been too well this last week with some major teeth problems. So thanks very much for that. Oh, under the wrist. So if we've got any questions, we've got 15 minutes. We have obviously got the presenters here. We've also got Daniel. Moira has had to leave, but we have got Dina Simmons, who is a Zoom master and who can answer any technical questions. So do we have any questions? Wow. Silence.
Hi, I've got a question. My name is Katuta Lumpa, member of Stevenage Speakers.
Hi.
For the Zoom master, because it was suggested that you have 3 Zoom masters, where you've got a club with a few people. And for example, in our club, we were thinking about having 2 Zoom masters, the main person and a backup. For the third one, can you auto time Zoom to just count people out of the room? I'm just wondering what to do about the role of Sergeant at Arms / third Zoom master. What is your suggestion or recommendation where you haven't got enough people to cover all the roles?
Well, one thing we offer from the Zoom Contest Academy is to offer help to clubs that need our expertise to enable you to run successful club contests. And we're also promoting our academy as well, where I think if you look at the chat, there will be an invite to our academy. We welcome members from clubs who are willing to learn about the technology and that they can bring back to the club and help the club run these successful contests. And everything you would need to know would be incorporated into those training sessions, like breakout rooms and sharing, screen share. But starting off basic, but working your way up to a fairly generous level.
Gearoid, can you supply or provide Zoom masters for particular contests? Like, I'm the division director in Division B, so I would be looking for professional Zoom masters. What's the scenario there?
I'd like to actually ask, Dinah is on the call as well.
I am.
Oh, hi, Dinah.
Dinah, do you want to take that one?
How are you?
Can you repeat the question? Because I was also answering a question.
The question, Dinah, is that I'm the Division B director, and I would be seeking a professional Zoom masters. So I was just wondering, can you provide them, or do we have to go search and find them ourselves?
Yes, we can. What you need to do, what I would say, is that you contact our Zoom Contest Academy Gmail address. I'll ask Liz to actually put it in there. And Liz is, we actually nickname her Big Mama. Sorry, Liz. but she coordinates everything between the events and the Zoom Master resources. So if you are short, please send an email to Liz. Then you will automatically be asked as an event organizer, whether it's club, area, district, division, whatever. What is the event that you're hosting and putting on? How many people are you expecting, and what do you need in the form of Zoom Master? And then from that information, it is literally a Google form, so you're not having to email stuff back. You fill it online, and Liz has just put it in the chat now. So take that email address, and that's where you ask for some additional resource. But please, if you can be more in advance, the better it is that you've got the resource for people to help, because as you can appreciate, lots and lots of you are putting contests on. So do get ahead of the game in relation to that, and we are getting a lot of requests. But likewise, as I put in the chat, we can also train your people up as well. And if some of you are almost there, but just a little rusty, you know, we have a conversation. Katuta's been on our training sessions, so I know he's been there. Margaret's been on our training sessions. So there are several people here that have participated in those sessions, and you do get at the end of the training a really good opportunity to play in the sandbox, where you try and you become host and co-hosts and do everything that you would be expected to do in a contest: breakout rooms, moving people, polls, anything that a host would do. You will all get the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Dinah. Finally, just one brief question to Gearoid. Gearoid, can you email the presentation you did to us?
Yes, I can. No, oh, yeah, yes, I can. No problem at all, Sean. Sorry,
that'd be brilliant.
I was looking.
Sean, we can email all the presentations out to people.
Oh, very good, Danny. Okay, thanks
over
very
the
much.
next couple of days. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I've also
Danny,
put it's in the chat as well.
Thank you so much. Oh.
Danny, can I ask a couple of questions? I had a couple of questions, and Gearoid answered a couple of them in his presentation. So you did well in not letting me in before him.
Thank you.
Fabulous. All the presentations, they were excellent, and you think you know a bit about running contests, and then you pick loads of bits came up tonight. So just a couple of questions. Both Gearoid and William mentioned about the eligibility and that you have to declare your hand, but you can actually be, say you had a dual member in two different areas. They can compete in one area and they can compete in the other area as well, can't they?
No, just one area. When it's only the clubs that they could participate in, but even come area, they would have to side with one particular area.
But if one was held, say one was being held tomorrow night, and then the other, there were a dual member and their membership was in another club miles away, in a different area, can they compete in that one as well?
No, the only way they could possibly do two areas would be in two different contests.
Right. Okay. Good point. Now, the other question I had, Danny, please, is the agenda on the night. And there's been a bit of a debate about whether the titles of the speech should go on the agenda or not. Would the presenters have a view on that, please?
I'm happy to answer that question. I think again, it's a very different set of circumstances depending on what level of the contest you are at. As I was saying in my presentation, at the club level, things are so up in the air, you often don't know until the last minute who's competing, and therefore putting anything on the agenda. What I usually consider, and this sometimes goes with normal Toastmasters meetings as well, is you don't know who's going to turn up until the actual day. And especially with contests, the agenda can be completely meaningless. Sometimes by mistake, it has all the judges' names on it. So you're probably better off, in my opinion, not having an agenda, because the meeting is so random. And I think in my view, the contest chair really has to take control of whatever happens. You know, as in the example I said earlier, we had a contest a couple of weeks ago and one speaker pulled out, and I, as part of the judge's briefing, and this is in front of everybody, some guests, the audience, and the contestants, managed to persuade 2 people to enter the contest and do speeches there and then. So it wouldn't be possible to have their names on the agenda. And that's a very different situation for, say, a district contest, where you know weeks in advance who's going to be taking part and probably what the titles of the speech are. But I would say that in reality, you're probably best keeping all of the information kind of like behind the scenes until you announce the speaker's name and title.
I suppose, yeah, if I can just come back, William, thanks for that. But if you do have it, the question was that you could influence the judges by having the titles. But my thought on it is, I'll declare my hand, is that if you know your speakers and you know the titles, I don't see how the title would influence the judges. So that'd be my thought. I'm just interested.
In my experience, club level, area level, district level particularly, usually the people who get up the tree quickly are people who've been doing this year in, year out, and they tend to be kind of quite famous people in the Toastmasters community. And people have seen their speech numerous times. I mean, I for instance, when I competed myself, I probably done the speech 10 or 20 times, you know, both at different clubs, and people knew the speech inside out, the title. And I'm always amazed how many times you can deliver, especially in a humorous speech contest, you can deliver the same speech and people are still interested, you know. So you go to club, area, division. When you get to the district, it's usually much more different picture, because obviously you're pulling people in from all over the country basically, and you know, people aren't so familiar. But in your own area and district, I think you tend to get kind of like people who are well known, and you know in advance who everyone's going to be anyway, and you know, people are already hedging their bets on who's going to win.
And the important thing is you don't have a problem with the titles going on there then.
How do you mean, sorry?
You don't have a problem with the titles being on there, because as you say, everyone knows what the title of your speech is anyhow by the time you come to division.
Yeah, and usually you find not only people know the titles, but they know the speeches inside out, and people having conversations about whether this has been added or this has been taken away, or they've changed this part of their speech. Well, when somebody, especially when you get to district level, division level, people have seen your speech like multiple times. So, and that's a very different picture from the club level. So I don't really think it makes a difference whether people know the title or not. But in my opinion, everything should be kept behind the scenes, you know, no agendas, no information given until a need to know basis sort of thing, you know.
William, sorry, Marion here. You can actually do a different speech, can't you, in district if you want to, than the one you have won with?
Oh yeah, there's absolutely nothing. I mean, you could do a different speech in every level. I don't think I've seen it done, but I'm sure somebody's done it. But yeah, technically, there's nothing stopping you changing your speech.
Yeah, no, and the reason I'm saying that, there is confusion about that. Because I remember getting to division level and having a speech with something that was very topical. It was the time of the snow, and where everyone was running for the bread and all the rest. And then by the time the district contest came, it was old news. It was stale like the bread. And, you know, I should have changed the speech completely, but I had left it because I thought you had to leave it like that. You know what I mean? So you can change your speech so that people know if it's a topical thing that we're talking about at the time that was topical. By the time division comes along, it may be old news. So you can change your speech. You can change to a different speech.
I believe in the international contest, I've not been beyond district level, but once you get to the very, very top, you have to change your speech to the final. So you can't do the same speech in the absolute top level that you did to before, but I've never been that high. So
yeah, that's right, Will. Different speech for the semi-final and for the final required.
So there you go. Let's finish on that high point of you aiming to get to some of your clubs getting to the semi-finals and the international finals. I'd like, unfortunately, to draw it to a close now, because we said 8 o'clock we'd finish. I'd like to thank you all for giving up your time tonight to learn more about how to run a quality contest. I'd particularly like to thank our presenters, Moira, William, and I think Moira's gone, William and Gearoid. And I'd also like to thank, I can't see her, but Sarinka, who has worked hard over these last couple of days to put this together. So a big thank you to her for doing all that. All the technical stuff as well that I would struggle desperately to do. Can I just say, if you need any help with the technical aspects, you've heard about the Zoom Academy. What we're trying to do in the district this year is get more training of a general nature out to Toastmasters. So we're going to run over October, November, a different training session every week on a variety of subjects. Can you check your emails over the next few weeks for information on those? Because we really want to offer people as broad a range of subjects as possible. So we've got 10 different subjects coming up over October, November. If you're organizing an area or division contest or officer training, and you would like some officer training, we have a trainers bureau that's going to be up on the website, and there are Toastmasters, experienced Toastmasters, who have offered their services to train fellow Toastmasters. Daniel, would you like to say a few words to conclude?
Well, just to
pass it over to Daniel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danny. And I'd really like to thank you, Danny, for pulling this event together today. And I'll also put in a plug for your Speaker to Trainer Academy. Any area directors want to develop their skills as trainers. And believe me, as you become a leader, you become a trainer of men as well, and women. So there's a really good pitch out there for Danny Banks. Do reach out and get in touch with them for these programs. And once again, thank you all for the time, and bon voyage.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you and good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening.